Bienvenidos! Today we're going to talk about subjects, verbs, and subject pronouns in Spanish. But before we talk about Spanish verbs, subjects, and pronouns, I want to talk with you a little bit about English verbs, subjects, and pronouns. These parts of speech are super important when it comes to expressing ourselves in the English language and in the Spanish language, because these are the core of the meaning in what we want to say to each other when we use words. The subject of a sentence is simply the word that refers to whatever is doing the action in the sentence. So it's usually a noun. A verb is the action. It's the actual action that's happening in a sentence. And in the English language, every complete sentence has to have a subject and a verb. It has to have some action, and it has to have something doing the action. So here are some examples. Jessica reads. So in this sentence, the action is reads, and the subject is Jessica. In this sentence, Jessica is intelligent. The subject is Jessica, and the verb is. Just because we have a verb where you can't actually see the action doesn't mean there's no action happening. This is a form of to be. So it can be an action that's thinking or that is existing. So the verb is the action in this sentence. Jessica is reading. Now in this sentence, Jessica is the subject still, but we have two words that are the verb. It's a phrase. Is reading. And is in this case is called a helping verb. Jessica's the subject. Is helping the action reading. So we have two words that are part of the verb. In this sentence, Jessica is intelligent. The word is actually linking Jessica to the other part of the sentence, intelligent. So that's called a linking verb. So we have action verbs, linking verbs, and helping verbs. A helping verb always appears with another verb. We could say reading is fun. Now this is a little tricky because in this case our subject isn't a noun anymore. It's actually another verb, reading. We're talking about reading as if it were the subject. Reading is, we have a linking verb, is fun. Now in Spanish we also have subjects and verbs, and they perform the same function. The subject is what's doing the action, and the verb is the action part of the sentence. Jessica lee, that means Jessica reads. Jessica es inteligente, Jessica is intelligent. We have the subject, Jessica, the verb, es, linking it to inteligente. Jessica está leyendo. Here we have a helping verb, está, with the action verb, leyendo, reading. Jessica is reading. So our subject is still Jessica. And in this last sentence, leer es divertido. Reading is fun. So leer is our subject. It's not a conjugated verb, it's just our subject. Es is our action that's happening in the sentence, and divertido is fun. So es is our linking verb, linking leer to fun. Now, when we change verbs, we change the way they're spelled in sentences, we do this so that the subject agrees with the verb. That's called conjugating verbs. We have different forms of the verb to read, depending on what the subject, depending on who's doing the action. So conjugating verbs is simply subject-verb agreement, where we change the spelling of the verb to match whatever's doing the action, to match the subject. And when we change the spelling of verbs, we have different spellings that are available to use that are grammatically correct. Those are called the verb forms. And the infinitive form of a verb is the form of a verb that we use when there is no subject. Okay? Verbs without a subject, that usually means they're not the primary action in a sentence. That's the infinitive form of the verb. Now, for example, Jessica reads. If we changed the subject of this sentence to mean to I, we couldn't say I reads. We have to change this verb. That means we're conjugating it according to the subject. We want to have the verb form agree with the subject, and we'll have a different verb form. Reads is one verb form. Read is another verb form. I read. If we wanted to say they are intelligent, we can't use is. We can't say they is intelligent. We have to change the verb to be. We have to change it to are. They are intelligent. Jessica is intelligent. So those are some examples of using subjects and verbs and some of the terminology that we use in grammar when we're talking about changing those verbs to match the subject. And it's the same way in Spanish. We have to change the verb according to whoever's doing the action in the sentence. If we wanted to say Jessica reads, it's Jessica lee. But if we wanted to say they read, it would be ellos leen. Let's do I. Since I have I over here, we'll do I read, yo leo. Okay. We've changed the verb to read to match the subject of the sentence. Now, the word yo is a special kind of subject. It's actually a subject pronoun. And I have another sheet here to show you subject pronouns. Subject pronouns are actually words that stand for a noun. They're not the actual noun like Jessica. They're a word that stands for the noun. So in place of Jessica, we could use the pronoun she in English. In English, I've listed the subject pronouns and their equivalent Spanish pronouns. I is yo. There is no it in Spanish. He is él. She, ella. We, nosotros or nosotras. They, ellos, ellas. And you could be tú, usted, or ustedes. Now, these subject pronouns are super important because they refer to the verb according to how the verb is going to be conjugated. So we have to conjugate the verb, we have to change the spelling of the verb according to who's doing the action. Now, remember I said in English, every sentence has to have a subject and a verb. In Spanish, the verb forms often contain the meaning of the subject, and we don't actually have to have a word that is the subject in the sentence because that information is in the conjugated verb form. Let me show you. So in English we could say Jessica reads. In Spanish that would be Jessica lee. If we wanted to substitute a subject pronoun for Jessica, we would say she reads or ella lee. Now in Spanish, if we were in a conversation with somebody and we were just talking about Jessica reading, we could say lee, and that would be just grammatically correct, perfectly fine. But in English we would never say, just if we're talking about Jessica reading, we would never say reads. We would never do that. But in Spanish it's okay to leave off the subject entirely sometimes and just use lee. That's why verb forms are so important in Spanish, because it contains more information than what our verb forms contain in English. Jessica and Tina read. Jessica y Tina leen. They read, because we use the subject pronoun they in place of Jessica and Tina. Ellas leen. I read. We could just say leo or yo leo in Spanish. Leo means I read. Yo leo means I read. Jessica and I read. Jessica y yo leemos. we read. Nosotras leemos. Or we could just say leemos. Leemos means we read, and so does nosotras leemos. If we wanted to say you read, in Spanish we have lots of different pronouns, so I just picked the tú form. We could say lees or tú lees. So in Spanish, the verb conjugations are super important because they communicate the subject even more clearly than usually in English, because in English we would never leave off the subject in a sentence, but in Spanish sometimes it's okay to leave the subject off when we're conjugating verbs and forming a complete sentence.